We got some news today. Let's see. Yesterday, two men were arrested for stealing from the company Lowe's. Two men have been arrested for stealing more than $300,000 worth of machinery and tools and anything else from from the Lowe's stores in Kentucky and Indiana, with money that wasn't even theirs to be spending. Jeffersontown police arrested 48-year-old William Leon Walker and 49-year-old Aubrey Lamont Walker Sr., both of Louisville, on Tuesday for the crimes. Now, according to arrest documents, the two men would allegedly take items from Lowe's stores to the customer service counter, where they would purchase the items using company accounts. The only issue was neither of the men worked for the companies that were being billed. By the time companies declined the payments, the men were already gone, and Lowe's stores would have to refund the companies for the fraudulent purchases. Now, all in all, both men purchased about $319,127.84 of stuff between May and November. They were finally caught on November 14th after police tracked them down using surveillance videos from other stores. Now, the two men are charged with engaging in organized crime and theft by description. Now, the police said that this type of theft has happened at multiple locations of Lowe's stores in Kentucky. And they also believe that the Walkers were not acting alone, so they believe there might be other people involved, but, you know. And then another one, basically, a man gets 7 years for, let's see here. Confirm. Close that out. Oh, here we go. A man gets 7 years for stealing identities by posing as a rideshare driver outside Chicago nightclubs. Chicago, Illinois has sentenced a man to 7 years in prison for stealing people's credit cards and identities while posting as a rideshare service driver in Chicago. This is the second time that Gabriel Jackson has gone to the big house for the same scam. He pled guilty to operating a continuing financial crime enterprise in exchange for the sentence from Judge Lauren. From Judge Lauren, according to court records. Prosecutors dropped 25 other felonies in their plea deal, including multiple counts of wire fraud and identity theft. Now Jackson had been off parole for about a week when Chicago police arrested him for resurrecting the scam that he had back in November of 2021. Now, cops said that he had 32 credit cards belonging to 32 different people in his car when they took him into custody. Now, prosecutors said that Jackson typically preyed on people who were waiting for rides outside nightclubs, mostly in the downtown Chicago area and in Wrigleyville, which is where the Cubs play. The case that ended his latest round of criminal activity began when a couple from out of town got into his car outside Spy Bar, which was 226 West Ontario, in Chicago around the closing time on November 13th of 2021. Now, Jackson told the couple that they were in the wrong car but offered to let them pay him directly for a ride to their destination in Lincoln Park area. When they arrived, Jackson scanned a credit card from each victim on his phone and had them enter their PINs, prosecutors said. He told them that their banks declined the transactions and the victims then paid Jackson $15 cash for the ride. They later realized that someone was conducting transactions on the cards that they gave Jackson. Now, the couple notified police, and CPD's financial crimes investigators quickly identified Jackson as a suspect based on their knowledge of his rideshare scam history. Now the cops arrested Jackson during a routine traffic stop less than 6 hours later. Now, when they arrested him, and they pulled him over, basically police found a bag containing 32 credit cards inside Jackson's Chevy Impala. A card belonging to the man he picked up at Spy Bar was in his pants pocket. The report said, but on the front seat of Jackson's car, police found a credit card swiper attached to a cell phone that was open to an app that records pins, according to the report. Now, among the 32 credit cards police found in the bag was the one that belonged to a man who identified Jackson as the person who posed as the rideshare driver as the victim left the Wrigleyville bar on September 16th of 2021. Now, that victim said a phony Uber driver swiped his card on a phone and told him to enter the PIN. The driver returned a similar-looking credit card and then used the victim's card and PIN to withdraw $1,000 from his account at an ATM near Wrigleyville. Jackson's 7-year sentence will be reduced by 50% for good behavior even if he does that. But after So Jackson's 7-year sentence will be reduced by 50% if he does good behavior. And then after receiving credits earned while in custody, he is expected to be paroled by no later than March 30th of 2026. So he has to do at least 3 years of the 7. But Jackson's first incarceration of the Bragg-Share scam ended in August of 2017. When prosecutors charged him with 23 counts of operating a continuing financial crime enterprise and identity theft. The mechanics of the ruse were the same. He asked bar hoppers who got into his car to provide a debit or credit card, which he would swipe on a phone before asking the victims to enter their PIN number. Then Jackson would return a similar looking debit card that did not belong to the passenger, but after the victim got out of his car, Jackson drove to an ATM and withdrew cash using the victim's actual card and the PIN data that they entered, police said. Now, Jackson picked up passengers around nightlife districts. Basically in the 1st, 18th, 14th, and 19th police districts, which stretch from uptown to the near south side. It includes Bucktown and Wicker Park areas. He listed a home address in Lakeview East at the time, but nobody knows for sure whether he lived there or not. But months later, he was arrested again to face additional charges for allegedly operating the same scam while he was supposed to be on the house arrest monitoring. But I think he should do all 7 years and not just half of it. In a terrible turn of news, a city in Illinois was named the murder capital of America for the 11th straight year. It's not a distinction that any city wants, but unfortunately one is recognized as such. When you think about sheer population size of some of America's biggest cities, you would think in your mind that it would be either New York number 1 and then Los Angeles number 2 when it comes to murder, but that isn't the case. Believe it or not, New York City isn't even number 1 or number 2. Actually, New York City ranked 3rd overall, and Los Angeles was number 5 in the actual case of murder. New York City has had 438 homicides, which is a big number, but considering the 8 million people who live in that area, it's actually considered to be one of the lowest murder rates in America. Houston had the 4th highest total number of homicides in 2022, while Philadelphia had the 2nd most. However, there was only one city that had so many murders back in 2022, and it had 181 more than Philadelphia, and we're talking about Chicago here because Chicago has a lot of murders due to gangs. According to Wire Points, Chicago had 697 homicides, and they were the most in the nation for the 11th straight year in a row. Chicago's homicide rate climbed 25.8% per 100,000 people in 2022, from 18.6 in 2019. It's a 39% increase, but now per capita, Chicago ranked 13 overall, but New Orleans having had 74.3 homicides per 100,000 people in 2022. Now, while the numbers for Chicago were dismal in 2022, it looks like there has been some very minimal progress as homicide numbers have dipped in 2023. But as of today, as of this week, homicides in Chicago are still at 523, according to what the Chicago Sun-Times had reported. Yeah, I moved out of Chicago about 15 years ago because there's no way in hell I would want to stay. There was 20 people that were injured in a Chicago commuter train crash. Now, this was last night. More than 20 people have been injured after a commuter train in Chicago collided with the rail equipment. Some of those injured are in critical condition, according to fire officials. But the Chicago Fire Department said the city's transit authority team had smashed into a snow removal equipment just before 10:35 a.m. on Thursday near Howard CTA train station, according to the Associated Press. Now, there were 31 commuters and seven CTA workers on the train when they hit the slower moving snow removal equipment. Of the 31, 23, including 4 children, were taken to nearby hospitals in the area. But 3 of the injured were listed in critical condition, though none are reportedly suffering life-threatening injuries, according to Assistant Deputy Chief Paramedic Keith Gray. Now, the other passengers on the train, when it hit the equipment, declined medical assistance, which you have the right to do. You could deny medical equipment if you want to, or medical assistance, shit like that. Now, passenger Shayla Smith was on her way to work on Wilmette and had just boarded the Purple Line train at Howard Station when she heard the crash. She said that passengers on her train began screaming and that an older woman fell from her seat. Basically, people said they heard like a horrible boom sound. It was like a weird boom. It felt like we were going to tip over, and I was wondering what the fuck was going on. And basically, our bodies were shivering. Video captured by local news stations showed the end of the commuter train had been crushed inward. Now, some of the passengers exiting the train following the accident were taken to a triage center for examination. At least one person was bleeding heavily from their head, but it didn't say whether the person died or not. Obviously, you could still survive from heavy bleeding. There was at least 15 ambulances that were called to the scene to assist with the victim transport. Now, CTA officials are still investigating the cause of the crash, but the incident has disrupted several service lines on the CTA's red, purple, and yellow lines, according to the CTA. Also, Indiana ranks number 9 in financial fraud scams. Obviously, basically, if you get a telephone call, basically, you're supposed to alert people that it's suspicious, or basically, just don't answer the call. BP Oil Refinery has been awarded federal funds for carbon storage efforts. A project to build a carbon storage hub centered around BP's Whiting, Indiana oil refinery has gotten a funding boost from the federal government. BP Carbon Solutions Project Crossroads has been awarded $98,240,569 from the U.S. Department of Energy. The eventual goal is to have multiple carbon storage facilities in the area of northern Indiana, northeastern Illinois, and southwestern Michigan, which is linked by more than 100 miles of new pipeline, and that in return will help with decarbonization efforts in northwest Indiana. But in a statement, U.S. Representative Frank Murban of Highland said that it builds on the recent announcement of funding for a clean hydrogen hub for the Midwest. He called on leaders to continue building on this momentum to ensure northwest Indiana remains a leader and creating new clean energy jobs and technologies. But let's get back to the fraud here on this part. Okay, in Indiana, with the rise in scam phone calls and text messages, financial fraud is plaguing the nation, with some of the least expected states being the most affected. Fraud is defined by Merriam-Webster as the intentional perversion of truth in order to induce another to part with something of value or to surrender a legal right. Now, this definition may vary state by state based on the local or state laws that it applies. According to data released by Topolti, Indiana is ranked number 9 on the list of states with the highest financial fraud. According to Indiana criminal defense lawyer David Lewis, in the state of Indiana, fraud crimes are charged as either misdemeanors or level 6 felonies, depending on the severity of the case. Now, the number 1 state with 286 victims per 100,000 in population is Nevada. See, Nevada has the highest financial fraud in the country. Depending on severity, Nevada law states that an individual committing the offense can face up to 4 years in prison and up to $5,000 in fines when they should be serving life. The second state on the list for most financial fraud is Delaware, with 228 victims per 100,000 in population. Now, Delaware does have measures to minimize fraudulent activity with the state's Fraud and Consumer Protection Division that's set up by the Attorney General's Office to protect the public from fraud. Now, the third highest state facing financial fraud is Alaska, with 210 victims per 100,000 per the population. Now, the United States as a whole comes out on top with the highest number of victims compared to the top 20 countries. In fact, the U.S. nearly doubled the number of victims of the United Kingdom, which came in second on that list. So what precautionary measures can be taken to avoid financial fraud? With the advancement of automated payments, more precautionary measures have been taken to protect those from fraudulent activities. Now, biometrics, authentication, and AI-driven algorithms have played a pivotal role in creating online safety. And according to the Internet Crime Complaint Center, or the Recovery Asset Team known as RAT, these preventive strategies have had a 73% success rate. Now, one of the best ways to avoid financial fraud is to be aware of all personal accounts and confirm any financial communications with your institution. If you need to report a scam, contact your financial institution and report it to the Federal Trade Commission so both can create a case. But yeah, so if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. You can also go ahead and leave a comment and let me know what you think. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.